Hey everyone, it's your boy Chrysalis here, and this is going to be part 3 in our series Road to the Oscars 2025, where, in case you have not watched the first two, I cover the Best Picture nominees for all the movies that came out last year, and all these Best Picture nominees will come down to one winner come March the 2nd. Wow, that sounded like promotional material. So for part 3, we are going to be covering Sean Baker's Anora. This is the latest film from director Sean Baker, best known for films like Tangerine, The Florida Project, and Red Rocket. This film actually came as a surprise to me, as well as a lot of people when it premiered at the 77th Cannes Film Festival. I don't know if it's pronounced Cannes or Canes, but we're gonna roll with Canes because it just sounds funny. This movie immediately, when it was premiered at Cannes, became the Palme d'Or winner. It really ended up leaving a huge impression on everybody that watched it. And considering how commercially successful this film was, considering how many things it has been nominated for, this is easily Sean Baker's most acclaimed and most successful project to date. And he has certainly come a long way, not just being this indie guy who would make these movies filmed in unconventional ways. Like, take Tangerine, for example, where the entire movie was filmed on iPhone 6s because they couldn't get permission to film in public. What also I feel like needs to be understood about Sean Baker when it comes to his storytelling is that he will tell you the story from the perspective of the extra or the side character. The Florida Project, for example, is told from the perspective of not just the little girl, but also the landlord, played by Willem Dafoe, as well as numerous other characters as well. Characters that, in the realm of a different director, would serve as just the people that would tell the police what exactly happened, and then you never hear from them again. Baker is the kind of guy that if he were to do a crime thriller set in Los Angeles, your main character is probably going to be the bistro owner, as opposed to the detective that's on the case. And a lot of that certainly shows with Anora because, in the hands of a different director, Anora would be told from the perspective of the Russian family that is trying to sort this chaos out and just nip the problem in the bud. But with Sean Baker, he makes the titular character the main focus of the movie. And with this unconventional approach, as well as numerous other elements like the career defining performance of Mikey Madison, the further career defining moments of lesser known actors Yuri Borisov and Mark Edelshitin. Yeah, my Russian names are awful. Mark Edelshitin. Mark Edelshitin. All right, we're just gonna call him Mark. Along with great decisions in cinematography, stellar editing, actually done by Sean Baker himself. This is a culmination of a lot of Sean Baker's work for the last decades or so, leading up to not just his finest movie to date from my perspective, but also from my perspective, one of the greatest movies to come out of the 2020s. And an important detail that you can easily unpack this movie is to kind of focus on the character that the movie is named after. Her name is Anora, but she goes by Annie because, in a way, she doesn't affiliate with her Russian lineage in so many ways. So much so that when Yuri Borisov's character Igor kind of tells her what her name means, she doesn't care because Americans don't care about those things. Despite how simple of a character Anora is, or Annie is, she definitely displays a lot of multi-dimension with her acting. Mikey Madison was definitely the woman to play this role, as she shows a wide range of emotions all throughout the film: hate, anger, sadness, anguish, happiness. There's points where when you can tell that she's in autopilot with the kind of like the sanguineness or apatheticness when she's working. For a character that is definitely not in control of her own fate once the shit hits the fan, she definitely still puts up one hell of a fight throughout the film, figuratively and literally at points. So there definitely is a lot to unpack when it comes to Anora as a character. So if you guys want me to make like a more analytical video about this character, then please let me know in the comments. And while you're there, hit like and subscribe. If you want, that is. I'm not forcing you to. But as far as like this review goes, I'm going to just focus on what is crucial with the quality of the film. And nothing else, Mikey Madison's performance as Anora is just so incredibly crucial. As well as how she is written as well. If there's something I learned from one of my favorite movies, The Dark Knight, certain characters you don't necessarily need the whole picture or the whole origin story to understand and relate to and just be absolutely stupefied by a character. What little we know of Annie is that she is of Russian lineage, she's a sex worker, her mother and sister live in Miami, and that's it. And that's more or less kind of all we need to know. Baker purposely made it to where we don't know the whole story about Anora, so that way her intentions with her character are disguised and veiled really well. That's just really smart writing. I don't know how else to put it other than that. Because if we had this whole like origin where Anora was like a troubled teenager that fled to New York for one reason or another, and we're given this like sob story about her life, then maybe that would garner more sympathy, but it would just not be as effective in my opinion. But in a way, the writing doesn't all the way feel like it's all about her. It feels like she is a major set piece in a much bigger picture. But I feel like the film being told mostly at her point of view is just so invigorating to watch. Whether it's something simple as her just living her day to day before meeting Vanya, whether it's the scene where Vanya proposes to her and then they get married, whether it's her fighting like hell, and whether it's her in the final moments just in the car with Igor just feeling so defeated that none of this ended up being real. The realization that none of what happened was really going to be long-term and everlasting. It was just the fantasy of this young man, this fuckboy, if you will. But I think the best way to put how the story is told is to think of Annie as the smallest piece of the Matryoshka doll set. You know, those Russian dolls where there's like a big doll, but inside the big doll there's a smaller doll, and then so on and so forth until there's just the smallest doll in the group. The smallest doll will be Annie, who is inside of Vanya, and Vanya, whose life is in the hands of Toros, whose life is in the hands of Vanya's parents. And yeah, despite how much Annie fights, it just ends up being futile in the end. It's kind of like a dark, modern, anti-fairy tale in a way. And a lot of this is definitely emphasized by not just the script, but how the script is approached, where once you get to the second half of the movie, everything that Annie tries to do is end up being disrupted and controlled by the next couple of sets in the piece. Like in the scene where she tries to talk to Vanya while he's clearly high as fuck in the strip club, Toros comes in and just interrupts literally every single word she says. In a way, it definitely presents the hierarchy that is presented in the film, where, again, Annie is just the bottom of the barrel. And through it all, at the end of it, you just really feel bad for her. Through the excellent acting from Mikey Madison, as well as just the stellar writing, You really want Annie to succeed, and you just feel really happy that she's getting married to Vanya. And then you start really feeling bad about how the marriage just evaporates from thin air, regardless if it turns out that she either actually loved him or she just wanted a way out of the sex work occupation and the trappings of it that she had found herself in. I could just go on and on and on about the individual bits and pieces of why this is a fantastic story and why the acting and the cinematography and everything else is just enhancing it so well. Even like the supporting cast, especially Yura Borisov, who a lot of people don't understand how crucial he is as a supporting actor for this film. Yeah, he doesn't say much, but what little he says is crucial, and what little he does is crucial. As he is the only character in the entire film that ends up having any kind of sympathy for Annie. As well as, of course, Mark, who he may be the Russian Timothy Chalamet, but dude, like, he does just a fantastic job at just being the fuckboy. But in a way, the writing, as well as his acting, of course, has it to where you kind of feel bad for him as well, considering that you realize that he had no real freedom and he was under the thumb of his parents the whole time. So what he decides to do with like his freedom ended up coming at the cost of a lot of Annie's sanity. So in a way, you feel really bad for Annie and you really feel all kinds of animosity for Vanya. But when you realize that, again, he's just a smaller piece in the Russian doll set, then that's when you're like, okay, there's layers to this. So if it's not already apparent, I absolutely love the hell out of this movie. I think this was not just one of the better picks for Best Picture, but also one of the best movies of this year, as well as possibly this decade. I think Sean Baker definitely deserves a pat on the back for the work he put in, as well as the ensemble cast consisting of Mikey Madison, Yura Borisov, and company. They just absolutely killed it with a modern anti-fairy tale set in the dirty New York City. It has an act that lifts you up, it has an act that really brings you down, and in the middle is an act that makes you think, what in the hell is going on? So this movie gets 2 thumbs up for me. If I had a third hand, I would give it 3 thumbs up. I think it's absolutely perfect in my opinion. I think the only nitpick I really have is that I wish the movie leaned more into being told from her perspective, because there's moments where you get the shots from Toros's perspective because it kind of zooms out from Annie for a minute, moments like that. But other than that, yeah, I don't have really anything to complain about with this film. I really do love this movie. If you haven't seen it yet and you're somehow still nearby a theater that's playing it, definitely go see it. If you have watched this movie, what did you think of it? Did you love it as much as I did? Did you not love it as much as I did? Did you dislike this film? Let's hash it out in the comments. Tell me what you thought about this movie. Anyway, yep, that's about it. Part 4 is going to be Dune Part 2. Spoiler alert, it's another banger. This is your boy Chrysalis here, signing off.